everyone, welcome back to another episode of Chinwag here on Paul's Model Works. Now, considering who our interviewee is and the definite sense of style that comes across in all of his videos, I thought it would be appropriate to put a jacket and a button-up shirt on for this video and make it a little bit more formal. Now, today's interviewee I find to be a very great model builder and a very good artist as well, and an awesome source of inspiration for myself. And hopefully through this interview you guys will, if you've never met him before, you guys will learn a little bit about him and hopefully get a chance to see some of the great work that he does by subscribing to his channel. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you guys, who I'm sure is a stranger, who is no stranger to most of you, Mr. Ryer Appledorn.
Hey pal, thank you for the kind words, and you know what, you're looking mint. Give me 1 second. There, that's a little better. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for doing this interview with me. I can't wait to hear what questions you have.
Well, thanks again, man, for being in this video, and we're going to go ahead and get right to the questions. So for my first question, I know you've shared so much with us in your videos and all the different things that you're involved in and do, and the passions that you have, but maybe you could just take just a few minutes and share with us briefly a little bit about yourself and who Ryer is.
Okay, so who am I? Well, I am back and forth from Michigan to Illinois. So I'm in a little town here called Holland, and then I'm in a bigger town called Chicago. That are across the lake from each other. And I spend time in Chicago not only being a student and studying art and fine art there, but I'm also doing freelance work, basically, where I go around and if people need graphic design work, or if they want to commission a painting of something, whatever. Those jobs are few and far in between, but that's still what I do there. When I come home in Holland, I have family here, and that's usually my primary duty, is kind of being helping out the family. So I'm just kind of drifting around, and I like to try and do as much as I possibly can. So, but that's more of just my making. As far as who I am, I don't really know. I just kind of am.
All right. Well, for question number 2, it's kind of a two-part question. And first of all, this is going to be a non-model related question, but you do all kinds of artwork, man, and you do, from one of your latest videos where you talked about model railroading, to your actual, art painting and sculpting, and all the way to model building, man, there's so much stuff that you do. So as for this question, the first part of it is, what is your style? What would you consider your style to be? I know that it's very evident that you have one, and so I'd like for you to share a little bit with us about that. And also, maybe tell us what your favorite piece is that you've ever done. I think it would be cool to learn about that.
Okay, so my style, if I were to call it anything, I would call it eclectic, which a lot of artists see as being a cop-out, but I don't, because I work really hard not to be just an artist. I want to be a maker. So I want to be able to put my hands on something and be able to create. Whether that be a painting or an illustration, or kitchen cabinets, or a tiny house, a tiki god carving, or a model car, or a steam locomotive, or whatever. If it interests me, I want to be able to physically work on that thing, and that means that I'm constantly taking from different subject matter and different media and different. One day I'll be looking at something on Facebook, or one day I'll be looking at, I'll go on the walk in the woods and I'll find a particularly interesting root or something, and I'll dig that up. Or on Facebook, I'll see someone will post a picture of their car, and that'll be inspiration enough, whatever. So whatever I find that's interesting, whatever piques my interest, that sort of defines what my style is, and then that also. And so that means I'm all over the place. And that kind of leads into the second part of that question of what's my favorite work. That's a tricky question, because really I'm never really satisfied with anything that I do. 1,000 Nixon cuts. You're your own worst critic, whatever phrase you want to use. But I do have a particular love for whatever where it can be kind of a defining movement into a new style. And so what I mean by that is, if you look at my early work, this was before I went to Chicago. I was working on just really getting into painting, and I was really inspired by Basquiat, Keith Haring, the Chicago Imagists, and I was taking that and combining it into my real passion, which is steam railroading. So I was making paintings like this one, which is of two Dreyfus Hudsons, and this one just of a army-based tank locomotive. And I was doing them in these very bright and over-the-top colors. But the more I worked in them, they kind of evolved, and I started taking ideas from a different place, which started a new movement. That new movement, I kind of moved away from mimicking other artists, like Basquiat with the text and the squiggles and everything like that, and kind of refining my subject matter more. So that led into paintings like these. This is a streamlined locomotive called the T1. It was on the Pennsylvania line. This is another Dreyfus Hudson. And then this is Union Pacific's Big Boy engine, the largest production steam locomotive ever produced. So I was painting these, and still a big attention to color, things like being really pop, being really vibrant, and then kind of figuring out how to represent detail without fastidiously drawing the detail. That led me into more illustrative work. So I started working more on paper. I mean, I always worked on paper, but I started really to work on it. I started making illustrations where really vibrant and letting the medium kind of do what it wants. So if the ink's going to splatter, let it splatter. If the washes run, let it run. And then just making these illustrations where it's like, how can I abstract the figure enough that it's not a precise drawing, but it's still interesting to the eye. Then I kind of had this big shift where I kind of got away from the railroading as a subject matter, and I moved into tiki gods for some reason, I think just for the fun of it. And that is kind of led into my current style that I'm working on now. So I painted this series, which are these just big paintings of different tiki gods that do nothing really except for focus on the different, really basic color theory. And there are 6 of them, which represent, each different color. And they're all the same height, but they're all different widths, so they all kind of hang up in a wall and create a spectrum. And that, like I said, led into my current style. And then the subject matter of that is moving more towards the models that I'm working on now. So these are unfinished, little sneak peek. But it's that same kind of very graphic style, very colorful style, but now it's focusing on the automobile, although there is still a little bit of that tiki reference in a lot of these. Like I said, these aren't finished yet. These are still sketches and early washes and things like that. So that's that.
For our next question, we're just going to bring this back to model building, and this is a simple one. Tell us what your favorite model is that you've ever built, and why you think it's your favorite.
So my favorite model, I don't know if this really fits the criteria of the question. It's got to be Siren, and that is my 2.5-inch scale, 7.5-inch gauge steam locomotive. It's not finished yet, and I've done no videos on it. I will be soon. But we're in the middle of building it, and I love that thing so much because I've always wanted a steam locomotive that size. I've always wanted a steam locomotive like that, basically, and I'm building it to exactly the way I would want it. It's not historically accurate. It's accurate to my history, which, if you look at my models, is kind of how I do everything. A lot of this stuff never could or should exist, but I want it to. So, but that being said, there's no styrene. It's all metal, all steel, iron, and brass. And, there's no gizmology. I mean, everything on that engine works and has a purpose. So it's not a car. It's a steam locomotive. It's a train. So I'll post a video about that later on. But I think if it comes down to my car models, I don't have very many examples of what I'm doing on hand because I'm moving into a new shop. But one of my all-time favorite models has got to be Jean, which is a 1940 Ford Coupe. And the reason I love this one, she's a little damaged. We'll fix it. The reason I love this one is because it's not based off of a story or a reference image or a concept or anything like that. It's most of my builds are like that. This one is based off of a person, I wanted to kind of embrace my sister's personality and figure out, if my sister were a car, what would she be like? And it was really tricky sitting down trying to figure out what about Anna what would translate into a car. And there are obvious things like the color. She loves olive greens, and she's also a hippie. Her middle name is Jean, so it's a bit obvious there. But then going through and trying to reference, where's there going to be personality? Where's it going to be dirty around the edges? Where's their flair? Can I attribute like something about her visually into the car? Okay, so she's got piercings and they're not symmetrical, so how can I line that up with the car? Or how can I do all this stuff? How can I make this vehicle represent my sister? And I won't get into that too much, but it was really successful and she loves it, and a lot of people love it, and it seems to be one of my most popular builds, and I think it's because there is that kind of sibling connection there, but it just more time went into this model than any of my other projects. Just not in the building per se. Actually, I built it pretty quickly, but so much time went into trying to figure out how I could make this a successful build.
All right, for our last question, I would just like to find out where it is that you get your inspiration from. Your models and your artwork is so outstanding and sometimes so wild. I'm just intrigued to find out where you get these wild ideas from, if they just pop out of your head, or where do you get this stuff from, man? And what is your process behind these builds and coming up with these ideas?
So I'm sorry to say that, just like the rest of my answers to the questions here, this one is also all over the place. My inspiration comes from anything. So, it could be from, like, my sister trying to figure out how to put her character into a car. But a lot of the times it comes from stories. My friends will tell me a car story, or I have tons of car stories about experiences I've had with automobiles, and I take those and I kind of figure out where the best part of those stories. I try and figure out, okay, where's the climax of the story, where's all this stuff, and then how can I use hyperbole to really expand on that story, and then if I were to remove my actual connection to it, how can I make that into a vehicle? So an example of that would be up until it threw a rod a couple of weeks ago, sadly, at only 100,000 miles, I drove a 2002 Buick LeSabre, which is not the coolest car on the block, but we called it the Killdozer for a story that we won't get into now. But we took that story, and that story just blew up into this wonderful, colorful history about what the Killdozer was. And so then I was... after thinking about that story for a long time, I was like, okay, well, how am I going to build that into a vehicle? Well, I'm going to find an old Buick, and the Riviera just happened to be one of the only available kits, but it also fit that kind of angry charisma of something of the Killdozer, and then try to translate that into what that vehicle would look like physically. And now, of course, we're going back and doing that many, many more times. Another example might be looking at a picture of something. So maybe seeing a landscape and trying to imagine, okay, where would that vehicle work in the landscape? How could I take that vehicle, or how could I take that landscape and put a vehicle in that just looked like it belonged there? That's been very difficult to try and do that, and I haven't finished an example of that yet, although my build, which was supposed to be for Chevy Truck Month, which is still not finished, is kind of an example of that. It was a vehicle that was built from the things around it, which, kind of the true definition of a rat rod, but, this whole story behind that one is there was a kid who was trying to get as many parts as he could because he wanted to escape from his town, and he built this thing literally out of a truck that he pulled out of the dirt, and all this crazy stuff. So that's another example. Sometimes it's just walking in, going on Amazon, or going to a hobby shop and seeing a car, seeing a kit, and going, I like that. Seeing a car in real life, going, I like that body style, buying it, and then just going, what color am I going to paint this? What am I going to do to it? And then just totally improvisation on the moment. So if I'm sitting there with a vehicle, I'm going to go, okay, this is a Plymouth Superbird. It's really cool. It's Americana. It's classic. It's the manly muscle car, but it's also not like every man's muscle car. Like everyone had a Mustang or a Challenger or a Charger. Plymouth Superbirds, I mean, they were huge and they were kind of weird and everything like that. So it's like, okay, cool. So it's like unique American muscle. So I'm going to paint it red, white, and blue, but I don't want to be patriotic because that's kind of a little too, not my style. So I'm going to look into the Native Americans who lived on the plains and look at their geometric patterns. And it's like, okay, I'm going to make red, white, and blue versions of those geometric patterns and then apply that onto the car to give it its look. Or I'll be like, okay, I have this Morgan three-wheeler. This thing's really cool. Oh, okay. So the molding process was done really, really poorly on this, and the entire front end is all mismolded or not even in the kit, and it's real, bad. So I'm gonna have to rebuild the whole thing on a popsicle sticks because that's the only material that I have right now. So I rebuild that. It's like, okay, so now if the front of this end was built on a popsicle sticks, or was rebuilt because this guy was trying to drive across country, how would I represent that in the rest of the car? So it's like, okay, so this guy, rebuilt the front end of the car, but he really didn't know what he was doing because he built it out of like wooden logs. So maybe he's got patches on the back of the car, or he's whatever. So a lot of it is improv, just seeing the thing, and if it speaks to me, just kind of working with the vehicle, much like painting, where a lot of people like to plan it out. Not all the time I like to do that. A lot of the time I like to just have a blank canvas, a blank thing of styrene, and just go to town on it and see what happens. So yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you again, Ryer, for being a part of this video. I know I have tremendously enjoyed learning about you and a little bit more about your artwork and the different things that you like to do. And everybody else, if you've enjoyed this, then definitely check out Ryer's channel if you haven't. I'll put a link down in the description below, and he's got some amazing builds and some amazing stuff, so make sure you get over there and check it out. Thanks again, Ryer, and I'll talk to you all next time.